Welcome, and we're going to talk about canning jams. So, first, we're going to go through just a few instructions. And if you guys can mute for the minute while we go through this, and then I'll do the demonstration and we'll take questions along the way. So, the first thing we want to say is you want to use tested research-based because these will give you the best results and also ensure that you will get a safe product. So here are 3 books that will have tested recipes in them. The Ball Blue Book, Guide to Preserving, the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning, and the University of Georgia's So Easy to Preserve. Okay. And then if you want to get your information from online, here are 2 websites. The National Center for Home Food Preservation has the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning on it. You can actually download it in a PDF. You would go to publications, and then you would see it would say the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning, and then you can pick what sections, or you can do them all if you want and print them off and have them. Or local extension offices often have it, or you can order it online. I think it's through Purdue. Julie, do you know? Do you remember?
That's what I remember, yes.
Okay. And also the Ball website is called freshpreserving.com. That also has some of their research-based recipes on it, but not all. If all of you would be willing to give us your name, and if you've registered with us, we have your email address. So if you just give us your full name, we can send you the slides. So you have all that information and you don't have to try and take notes. Another source for jams and jellies would be the pectin recipes. Inside, they have inserts inside the pectin boxes that you can use, and also a reliable resource for recipes for jams and jellies. All right, so let's get talking. There are a lot of different types of preserves, and I'm going to talk about 5 of them, but there's even more. But we'll just go over the most common ones. So first, jams. They're not as firm as jellies, and they're basically crushed fruit, that you then mix with sugar and pectin, and you get a nice product that you can spread fairly easily, but it has the pieces of fruit crushed in it. The jellies are clear, firm, made from juice. It has no pieces of fruit in it, and it holds its shape where, like, if you were to pull some jelly out, it would hold its shape, versus the jam, it wouldn't hold its shape. Conserves are pieces of fruit mixed together in a gel type of thing. Marmalades are citrus suspended in clear jelly. And your fruit butters, are thickened fruit sauces, often with added spices. So there are 4 key things that you need in order to do a preserve: the fruit, pectin, sugar, and acid. And each of these factors must be in the correct proportion, or the preserve will not set correctly, and they probably won't be safe to eat in our reality. So the addition, deletion, adjustment of any of the elements may affect the quality and also the safety of the product. So obviously the fruit is the base, and without it, you wouldn't have a jam or jelly. And sometimes they do like peppers and stuff like that too, the vegetables. But if you're doing the fruit's providing some of the acid, which helps keep it safe. Otherwise, with the vegetables, you're going to have to add more acid in order to get the pH at the correct level. All right, we're going to talk individually about each one of these. First, pectin. It's a naturally occurring plant fiber found in most fruits. They are long molecules and they form cross-links, so they kind of get all jumbled. And these cross-links trap the water, causing a gel to form. You can do it naturally, especially if you have a high pectin fruit, or you can add pectin. So as you can see the list here, some of the fruits that are high in pectin, your apples and citrus, cranberries, grapes, etc., are ones that you could actually make jellies and jams out of without adding pectin. And then the other ones, the low pectin fruits, you would need to add pectin in order to get it to do a jam. Underripe fruit contains more pectin than your ripe fruit. And when you're doing jam or jelly without adding pectin, you have to cook it down and get a more concentrated form in order for it to form the gel. So commercial pectins, there are a lot available. They are usually made from apple pomace or citrus peel, and these are readily available products because of the juice industry. These are things that they would just normally discard, but because the pectin industry would use them, they just can get them from it. And then they process it and extract the pectin out of these products in order to make it in a form that's more pure for you. The regular pectins you can get in dry, like powdery form, and liquidy. You can't interchange them. Some people are like, great, I'll just use the liquid form of pectin instead of the powdered one in this recipe that I have because I have the liquid, and that's not going to work. They work differently. You can't just interchange them, unfortunately. If you want to use a liquid one, you need a liquid recipe. If you want to use a powdered one, you want a powder recipe. The good thing about commercial pectin is that it eliminates the need to test for the firmness of the gel. It requires less cooking and often gives you more. If you want to keep it good, let's say you buy a lot of pectin and you don't end up using all of it in 1 year, you store it unused in a cool, dry, dark place, and you'll get the full length of storage out of it. If it's not a cool, dark, dry place, you probably won't store very well and it may not give you what you want in years to come. Generally, they recommend that you use it within 1 year or by the expiration date that is on the container. Is it okay? Sorry, just checking on some of the boiling water. There are some modified pectins. These are only available in powder form. They will form a gel with lower sugar concentrations and some even without sugar being added because of the flexibility and the amount of sugar. You can add alternative or non-nutritive sweeteners instead. And unfortunately, so that's good for people who want a jam or jelly that don't want to eat a lot of sugar. Unfortunately, they don't tend to store as well because of less sugar, and we'll talk about sugar and why it's important for preservation. They just don't last as long. They will get mold and yeast growing in them a lot sooner than any of the other ones would. So you have to take that into consideration. All right, sugar. Obviously, we use sugar because it sweetens it, but also sugar is important because it suppresses microbial growth because it binds to the water and makes it unavailable for the microbes, basically dehydrating them out. So they are not able to grow because they don't have enough water to do it. So if you're lowering the sugar, that means more water is available to the microbes so that they can grow and um, cause problems for you when some water is available. Gel formation is another thing that the sugar does. It helps the pectin in creating those cross links and making it gel. And then stuff that has sugar in it will also look better because it glistens. So it has to, sugar has to be in the right concentration or there's going to be problems. You have to have 65% to 85% sugar in order for you to get a good jam or jelly. Anything less than 65%, you'll get a weak gel and it often will be runny. And anything greater than 68%, you'll get a hard gel and potentially have undissolved sugar crystals in there as well. You can use alternative sweeteners if you don't want to use sugar. Unfortunately, you can't do it all with it. You kind of just have to replace part of the sugar with these alternatives. So honey, if you're doing a no added pectin jelly or jam, you can replace half of the sugar with honey. If you're doing one where you add pectin, you can replace about a fourth of the sugar with honey. The thing with honey is it has a darker color, and so that might affect the color of your jam or jelly. And also, it can change the flavor slightly. Your light corn syrup, you can use it to replace about 1/4 of the sugar if you're just making those stuff without added pectin. When you're using the powdered pectin, you can replace up to 1/2 of the sugar with the light corn syrup. And if you're using liquid pectin, you can replace up to 2 cups of sugar with the light corn syrup. You can also do some sugar substitutes, but you have to use the low or no sugar pectins in order for it to make it work. Because with the traditional pectins, it has to have a certain amount of sugar in order for it to form a gel. If you're making a cooked jam or jelly, you will want to use a heat-stable sweetener, such as sucralose with the brand name of Splenda or stevia. Saccharin may leave a bitter taste, and aspartame loses its sweetness when it's heated, so those won't work well with the jams and jellies that are heated. When you are doing one like this, you want to make sure to follow the manufacturer's suggestions for the best quality and safety of your product. So let's move on to acid. Acid is needed for flavor and gel formation. Again, it has to be at the right concentration. Too little acid and your jam or jelly will weep and form drops of water on the surface, and too much acid and it will be a weak gel and increasingly runny. A lot of times some of the acid will come from the fruit, and underripe fruits tend to be higher in acid than your riper fruits. If you find one that you need to add acid to, generally they recommend lemon juice, the bottled lemon juice. But if you don't like the flavor that gives you, you can substitute 1/8 of a teaspoon of citric acid for 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. So when you are cooking up your jam or jelly, you will often form foam, which this is when the pectin traps air underneath it and it holds the bubbles. When it starts to boil and the bubbles come up, the pectin will trap the air and hold those bubbles, creating a foam. And while the foam doesn't hurt the product, it does somewhat detract from the appearance. So if that bothers you, um, one method you can do is add butter or margarine. Now this would be the stick butter or margarine. It's 1/4 to 1/2 of a teaspoon, and this will eliminate or at least reduce the amount of foam that forms. And we're going to try it today with the jam or jelly that I demonstrate and see how much it actually reduces that foam. So if you decide you want to make a fruit spread without adding any pectin, again, you want to rely on the pectin naturally present in fruit. Your fruits are mixed with the sugar and cooked for about 30 to 45 minutes until it reaches a jellying point. You want to use fruits naturally high in pectin, like we talked about before, and you want to select a mixture of 3/4 ripe fruit and a fourth underripe fruit, because remember, the underripe fruit tends to have more pectin in it. There are 3 tests that you can use to determine if it's reached the gelling point or not: the temperature test, the sheet or spoon test, and the refrigerator/freezer test. Sorry there. So the temperature test, you would just use a jelly or a candy thermometer and test the temperature of it. You're going to boil it until the mixture reaches the proper temperature for your altitude. So here in Idaho, my altitude is around 4,500 feet. So it would be anywhere between 212 and 211. So I probably could pick either one of those to cook it to. If you're using the sheet or spoon test, this is where you have a cool metal spoon that you dip in the boiling jelly mixture, and then you raise it out to the side, like you can see in the pictures. And it should be about 12 inches above the pan and out of the steam. And you turn it so the liquid runs off, and you know that it's to the proper gelling point when the syrup forms 2 droplets that flow together and sheets or hangs off the edge of the spoon, like this purple picture. There's also a refrigerator or freezer test. This is where you remove the jam mixture from the heat, pour a small amount of the boiling jam on a cold plate, put it in the freezer for a few minutes, and if the mixture gels, it is ready to fill into the jar. Oh. So for some altitudes, you can get away with doing your jams or jellies with a processing time of less than 10 minutes. And because of that, that would mean you'd want to sterilize your jars before you use them. If your processing time is 10 minutes or more, then you don't have to sterilize it because it's going to be in the boiling water long enough that it's not going to be a problem. So you would place your empty jars upright on a rack in the canner. You want to get at least 2 inches of water over it, and you're going to boil it for 10 minutes at 1,000 feet or under. And then for every 1,000 feet above that, you're going to add an extra minute. So for my altitude, which again is 4,500 feet, I would add about 5 minutes. 4 minutes. So it'd be about 14 minutes for me. You keep the jars in the hot water until they are ready to be filled with the product that you have. All right, here we go. The steps in making jam or jelly. So like we said before, you're going to sterilize your jars if it's a processing time of less than 10 minutes. Then you're going to pair your lids according to directions. And most lids now, you would just wash them in hot soapy water, rinse them off, and then dry them, and they're ready to go. But always look at your directions to make sure that you're doing what it says, because that's going to be your best source of information on them. You're going to prepare your jam or jelly according to your directions. You're going to boil it and skim off any foam. You're going to fill your jars to 1/4 of an inch headspace. Make sure that you release any air bubbles by sliding a plastic or non-metal spatula down the sides in order to get those air bubbles out. You're going to wipe the sealing surface with a wet paper towel, adjust your lids and screw bands, and as soon as you get to the point where there's any resistance with your screw bands, then you're going to take it an extra quarter of the distance around, or about 1.5 inches more to get the right tightness of the jar. And it's really such a science, unfortunately, for us who like to not really think about it very much and just say, oh, let's just do it, and not really think about every little step. If you get it too tight, your lids might buckle. If you get it too loose, the jar might not seal. So it's kind of important that you get it about the right tightness. You're going to process your jam or jelly in the boiling water canner, adjusting for your altitude. You're going to turn off your heat and remove the canner lid. Wait the 5 minutes so it cools down just a little bit. Then you're going to remove your jars. You want to keep, when you're removing it, you want to keep the jars upright. So lift it straight up, straight over, and straight down to cool on a rack or a towel. You're going to cool them upright and undisturbed for about 12 hours before you test the seal to make sure that it's sealed. Once that's sealed, you're going to remove the screw bands because you don't need them for storage. And in fact, that can cause some problems like they might rust, be difficult to remove. They also might conceal a broken seal on the jar. And so you think of it as sealed and it really isn't. So it's just best to store them without the screw bands. Then you're going to wipe off the jars and the lids, label and store them for that. So I think right now we're gonna start demonstrating what to do. And first I gotta switch over the host so that you can see me demonstrating. All right, I'm gonna switch over now. Switch to this. Hello. Okay, so if you actually put your click on, what's wrong?
It's still not. I gotta get this big.
If you click on the window with me in it, you can pin it. You might have to right click on it.
You gotta step back.
So, Julie,
Yes.
how's that working? Do we need to make any adjustments?
I can see you from the neck down.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's see.
How about now?
No.
No?
It's much better.
Okay. All right. So we're going to make strawberry jam. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to cut up your strawberries, like I have here. And then you're going to mash them. And I just have a potato masher. I'm sure there are better and easier ways to do it, but to Just take a hand potato masher, and then you're gonna mash up your berries as much as you want. Obviously, the bigger the berries you leave, the more chunks you will have in the jam. So when you get them mashed up, then you're gonna put them in a pot. Checking my recipe just to make sure. And you're gonna add your pectin. And you're gonna bring it to a boil. So stir it in. Your strawberries. And you bring it to a boil. Then we're gonna add the sugar. And I'm just doing the recipe out of the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning, which is a full sugar recipe. After it brings to a boil, we add the sugar, stirring constantly, and then you're gonna get it to a full boil, which means there's bubbles everywhere. And you're gonna boil it hard for 1 minute, stirring constantly. You're gonna remove it from the heat and skim it off, and then you can put it in your jars. So while we're waiting for this to come to a boil, sure I have the right burner on. Are there any questions?
There aren't any in the chat, but if you'd like to ask a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks, Jen. She's getting a picture of the strawberries in the pot for you. No questions, huh? Well, while we're waiting for this to boil.
Laura, we have a question.
Great. What is it?
Do you add any water if it's really thick?
For the jam, no. It's totally just the fruit, pectin, sugar, unless you need to add acid, which will probably be lemon juice, so it would be a little bit of liquid, but not for the jam, no. Any other questions? Well, if you have any questions, be sure and ask them at any time in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and verbally ask it out loud. While we're waiting and nobody seems to have any questions.
What's your favorite type of jam to make?
Me? What's my favorite type of jam to make? Yes, mine is strawberry. How about all of you? What are your favorite types of jam? Either to make or to eat, doesn't matter.
My favorite is raspberry freezer jam with the lower sugar pectin.
Yum. That sounds really delicious.
We have an apricot jam.
Apricot jam is also very yummy.
Apple butter.
Ooh, apple butter I haven't tried.
All of them, Mellow.
All of them. Yes, all of them. When I was growing up, my grandma lived with us because she kind of had dementia. And my brother would always tease her and saying that she would eat a stick if they had jam on it. She loved jam that much. So I think she would agree with you. All jams are good. Still have not boiled. Jen's getting another close up for you. Oh, it looks like somebody made a comment.
I've never made it. I'm going to make blackberry because we have millions of blackberries next to us.
Oh, yum. I like blackberries. I guess I forgot to try to get you going. You're gonna wash your jars, sterilize them if you need to, and then you need to keep them warm. So right now I have my jars in this boiling water canner with water. So if Jen would you come and get a look at it. So they're just there warming up, nice and hot, ready for us to put the hot jam in when we get that done. Two, you're gonna wash your strawberries obviously before you cut them. Oh, we're starting to boil, so let's get a good boil and then we'll add our sugar in. When you wash your strawberries, you're gonna rinse them. I often find a strainer very helpful. Rinsing just takes all of the dirt and germs, or at least most of the dirt and germs, off, and it goes down the sink. If you soak them, unfortunately, you're just soaking them in the water with all the dirt and germs, and it doesn't really remove any of it. So every once in a while, we get a little pocket of boiling. So have any of you ever tried any of those, like alternative, like your marmalade, your conserves or preserves, any of those others that aren't the traditional, like fruit butters? One person said they have tried the fruit butters and liked them. I've never tried any of those, so I'm just curious, has anybody tried them and if they liked them?
I had a community member that wanted to make low sugar orange marmalade. So we got together and made that in our extension office. But I have made pear butter for a long time. And apple butter is really good too.
Oh, those sound yummy. Okay, Jen, come and get a look. You can see it's starting to boil all around. And then we're gonna add our sugar. So for 8 cups of sugar, which is a lot of sugar.
Laura, we have a couple of comments. One person
Great.
said that they've made persimmon butter.
Ooh.
And the other said, if you do a combo jam with a high pectin and low pectin fruit, what do you do?
So are you using an actual commercial pectin with it, I guess? Or are you trying to do it with no added pectin? So if you're doing it with the pectin added, you're probably fine with just making whatever mixture you want. But and Julie, if you know better, please correct me. But if you're doing a no added pectin, you're probably wanting at least 3/4 of it could be the low pectin one if you want it, with a fourth at least being the high pectin, just like you would with the underripe and the ripe. I would assume you could do something similar there. Obviously, if you did more, higher pectin, you probably have a greater chance of it gelling. So I don't know. I'm not really sure on that. Those are my guesses. And like I said, Julie, if you know better, please correct me.
Well, I've made some combination jams, and I find that I just always follow the recipe for the combination jams. I've never done it from, um, you know, I've never guessed. So,
Right. But if you wanted to mix your own fruits and you didn't have the recipe, I don't know. I tend to be like you and want to have that recipe just to ensure it would probably work out for me. So when it gets boiling, and it might take a little while, we're going to add about a half of a teaspoon of butter. Are there any questions? I have a couple more slides. We can switch back over while we're waiting for this to boil. Or if you guys have questions or comments, we'll take those. So we'll give you a minute to see if anybody has any questions.
Is there any other way to use, oh, I missed it, Julie. What was it?
is there any other way to use other fruit juices as a sweetener instead of synthetic sweeteners if you're going sugar-free?
That's a good question. I would again say look for a recipe that's been tested and research based. I don't think I've seen any. I don't know how that would turn out. Again, I'm gonna refer to Julie. Have you seen anything like that?
You know, when we made that low sugar marmalade, we just used the low sugar pectin. We didn't use an alternative sweetener. But now that stevia is really widely used in the market, you might take a look at that. Stevia is not a synthetic sweetener. It's from a Japanese herb. I actually bought stevia to plant in my yard this year, so it's so fun. It's actually sweet. You just pinch off the leaf of the stevia plant and chew it up, and it's sweet. Just it's pretty impressive. So you might take a look at stevia if you're opposed to a synthetic sweetener.
So Jen, if you could come in and get a look, it's not boiling yet, but it's cleared up, so it's like not so. I don't know. It's the color is become redder and it's not so murky. Any other questions or comments?
Not in the chat. We just had someone mention that they're very careful about using somebody else's or consuming somebody else's jams that they're given as gifts because they've had food poisoning.
True. And a lot of people, especially older people, didn't
Sorry,
use to
hang on.
oh,
There we go.
didn't use to process their jams and jellies in a boiling water canner. And the problem with that is, even though, like, if you're doing the traditional ones, so you have the high sugar, which binds up the water so the microbes don't use it, and the high acid, which also prevents microbes, you still get mold and yeast that can grow in your jams and jellies. And so that's why you want to do it in a boiling water canner, because those will kill the molds and yeast, so you don't, and get rid of the air, which they tend to thrive on, making it so that your products won't get them and grow with those. So yeah, it's important to be careful. I guess if you know the person and you trust that they can, in a manner that is correct, you're probably fine. But if you don't know, or for some reason anything looks off, definitely do not eat it. I had some jam from a neighbor. It's been a long time ago, and I opened it, and it definitely had yeast growth in it. So obviously, I did not eat any. Got rid of it. But yeah, it's probably important to be careful. I've had people who say, "Well, we just feed it to our husbands anyway, even with the mold." That's probably not the best practice. Some of the molds have been known to have carcinogens in them, so greater likelihood of getting cancer and other, I'm sure, just general stomach upset and foodborne illness right off the bat for them too. Julie, you have anything to add?
When I worked at another university, there was a food scientist that wouldn't eat at any picnics, potlucks, public dinners. He was so very, very careful that, he just made it a practice not to eat anybody else's food but his own. So it was very interesting. I'd never known anyone to be quite so strict on the type of foods that they'll eat. Oh, yeah, we don't we that was pretty not funny but funny. Leslie said, maybe you save those moldy ones for the neighbors you don't like. And
Oh, I guess. Hopefully they know not to eat them.
While we're waiting, can we try putting it back on there?
All right, so Jen's gonna try our tripod again, so please. No?
Come on,
Oh,
what's wrong? It just went.
you lost your video, Laura. All right, we lost Laura on that feed. I'm going to go ahead and just grab my phone and text her. I'm not sure she's aware we lost her on the feed. Just a moment.
so apparently. So. I'm so sorry about that. One of our cameras got off the Zoom. So sorry about that. I'm going to run over and check really quick. I'll just take you with me. The jam and see, it is boiling. Let's see. Let's stir it a little bit and see if it's a full boil. When we get it a minute. Now I added the butter. And I have to say it is less foamy. Sorry, let me actually get you here on it. Than it was the last time without any butter. So we're not doing a full boil yet. Just slightly, okay. Nope, I thought it was gonna boil for us. It was starting to, and then I stirred it. So if you can stir it away, it's not a full boil, unfortunately. So we'll give it a minute. Does it matter if the butter is salted or unsalted? I don't think it matters. I just use salted ones. I often use them interchangeably. If you don't want the salt, obviously using the unsalted will give you a little bit less salt in it. But ultimately, I'm not sure that it really matters. While we have a second, I'm gonna finish up our little All right, so I'm gonna finish up our little PowerPoint here. If you make your jams and jellies and it turns out that they're not thick enough, especially those jellies, they're too soft, you can remake them. It usually reduces the quality, but still sometimes you just don't wanna lose what you've already invested so much time and product into. So when you do that, you're gonna work with no more than 4 to 6 cups of jelly at a time, because any more and it doesn't work out so good. And then I also give all of you a link to the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning for jams and jellies. And at the back of that, it has the instructions for remaking the soft jellies. You would take them out of the jars and you would add additional pectin and try to get them to set up again. You would also want to reprocess within the 24 hours. Anything after that 24 hours, and it's probably not going to be that safe. We can also make pie fillings. You want to use the modified corn starches. They make the best pie fillings. So like your clear gel. Oh, and your ThermoFlow for your best products. Jen says it's boiling, so we're gonna try and get you over here so you can see it. So once it's really boiling really good, let's see. So yep, it's boiling good. Then you're gonna boil it hard for 1 minute. So I'm gonna set my timer here for 1 minute. And we're gonna keep stirring it. And I have like fogged up my camera, I see. And we're gonna switch cameras again. Oh, maybe not. We'll see. Sorry for all the technical difficulties. What do you think, Jen? Let's try it. Okay, here we go.
Still on.
Okay. So I need to make a host.
Mhm.
So apparently, if it's done, you need to just turn it off and take it. Julie, can you make us a host?
You bet.
Okay, if you want to bring it over here. Okay, so we're gonna take it off with our minute of full boiling. Julie, are we big?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So let's take a look at our jam and jelly. As you can see, it has a little bit of foam, but not too much. So, pull out some jars. There's our first jar. It kind of just depends on your preference. If this is too much foam for you, you can scrape off some of the foam. Unfortunately, it usually gives you any parts of the strawberries with it. And I'm just using this ladle to kind of take some of that foam out of there. But really, with the added butter, it didn't foam up very much, so that's good. I'm gonna use a funnel, and I'm just gonna add the hot jam to the hot jar. And so we're gonna fill it up to a 1/4 of an inch. So I'm gonna just show you really quick what that looks like. The 1/4 of an inch, if you have this little measuring tool, is the shortest one. And so I'm not quite there. It just seems like there's hardly any head space at all. I'm just gonna add a little bit more. And we'll see, it looks like we're pretty close. So I'm gonna slide this plastic thing down the edges to ensure that we get all those air bubbles out. Redo it, yep, looks like we're still there. So 1 jar of jelly, excuse me, is filled up. Let's get another jar. Oh, being loud here. So while I'm doing this, and I'm just like using the funnel, scooping the jam into the hot jars, does anybody have any questions or comments about the process so far?
There are no questions in the chat box.
Julie, what was your last comment?
I said there are no questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie, for monitoring that. All right, I'm all measured. There's our next jar.
There's just one comment. Aren't those jars hot as blazes?
They are hot, but if you don't touch them for very long, they don't burn you. So that's a good question. They were in boiling water. So probably your best bet would be to use some sort of hot pad or something with them. Just you notice I'm not touching them for very long.
It said you had fingers of steel.
Fingers of steel. Well, I don't know about that, but too hot. Get all of our air bubbles out. One thing I forgot to mention, especially with those packages of pectin, you don't want to double up your batches because the longer things have to cook, the more likely it is to break down the pectin, and so it doesn't form a gel and it's not going to set up for you as well. All right, I'm going to be showing you a good example and use something to touch those jars with. Oh, that's a small one. I made a lot more jam than I thought I would. Jam everywhere. Thank goodness we can clean up, huh? All right. Done with my pints. I'm now going to work on my half pints. How much can we get out of this? All right, I think we might have enough for one more half pint. I find it beneficial to have some smaller jars available just in case. It's not going to fill up a full jar. You're not going to want to process it if it's not a full jar. Probably your best bet would be to put it in the fridge and let it cool down. So you see right here, I don't have a full jar. They do have a quarter pint in here. So you can transfer that quarter pint, and it looks like probably still going to be a little more than that, but I'll be able to process a little bit more of it. And that's what I got left. So not bad. Not bad. So I'll get all the air bubbles. Sure, we got it about a fourth of an inch, and we got all of them filled. Hooray! So now I'm going to get a wet paper towel, and I'm going to wipe down the rims. Anything you leave on the rim of the jar will likely prevent it from sealing. Are plenty hot. So maybe I better get.
Laura, we have a question.
Yes.
Do recipes usually give you an idea of the yield so you know what size jars to use? I don't know if I
Yes.
have thought to have multiple sizes sterilized and ready to go.
Right. They do, but I've noticed that they aren't always accurate in their yield, unfortunately. So So I was just unsure, so I thought I would just have some smaller ones available, just so that you don't waste any. All right, so here we go. Got them all wiped off. Now we're gonna add the flats, and we have this handy little magnet that helps us. Not too many small ones. So. Now we're gonna add the rings. These are hot. So I tighten it until I feel a little bit of resistance, and then I'm gonna do it about a quarter of the way around again. All right. My hot pads are very sticky. Just my rack in there. Okay, we are ready to load our rack. So again, we're trying to keep our jars upright so we don't get any food or jam on the ceiling surface. Okay, so I'm loaded up. I'm gonna grab these little silicone things. Uh-oh, one of them tipped over a little bit. Gonna straighten that out best as we can. All right, I need to make sure that there is an inch or 2 inches on top of it. So if you want to take a look, Jen, you can see that there is at least an inch of water over the top of the jars. So I don't need to add any more hot water on top of it. Now, all we got to do is wait for it to boil and we can start our time. And put your lid on it. For this particular recipe, it's 10 minutes at my altitude. So I'm gonna switch back over to my other station, and Jen is gonna give her arms a rest. Thank you, Jen. And she will monitor it and make sure that it, she lets us know when it boils. Thanks. Any questions while we're here, and then we can finish talking about you muted the wrong place.
Did you fix it?
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's echoing. Is it echoing, guys? Yeah.
I'm done.
Okay, we got it. We got to pie fillings. So like I said before, you're going to use a modified cornstarch like Clear Gel or Thermoflow. to get the best product. Other products, they don't perform as well in processing, and then when you're actually baking the pie filling in the pie, they just break down more easily, and they don't hold the gel, for lack of a better word, as good. We say do not use flour, cornstarch, or tapioca because these are thickening products, and when it thickens it, then it makes it harder for the heat to reach the center of the jar. So if the heat never reaches the center of the jar, then it's not going to be safe for you to eat it. So don't use thickeners like the flour, cornstarch, or tapioca. I've used flour before I knew better, and they really do not turn out a good product. They get all clumpy and probably are not safe, like I said before. There are pie filling recipes in the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning, not in the jam jelly section, but in the fruit section. So if you're interested in doing pie fillings, that would be where to look for research-based recipes. Now, freezer jams, they're made in the freezer with instant jam or instant pectin that doesn't require heating for gel. At least if you use that type of pectin, it's going to give you a fresher taste and a more vibrant color because heat is not used. And also if you use those type of pectins, it's quick and it's easy. And another fun thing is you can get special jars and lids to make it easier. As you can see over here, Ball, and I'm sure other manufacturers as well have some. I've tried this lid that you see there. They just work on a regular jar, really easy and slick to use for your freezer jams. The fun thing about freezer jams too is last year when I couldn't get jar lids, I decided I was going to make a regular jam, but put it in the freezer because I didn't have the lids to can it. So I made my regular cooked jam, put it in the jars, put it in the freezer. Now when I want to use it, I pull it out. It's like a regular jam. I can keep it in the fridge and not the freezer. It has the same consistency as a regular jam. I just didn't process it in the boiling water canner. So how to make your freezer jam. So you're going to want to sterilize your jars. The plastic jars, if you put them in the dishwasher and they're too close to the element, they can melt. So you want to be careful about your placement if you want to wash them in a dishwasher. So you follow the directions. You mix it according to the directions. You ladle it into the jars to the fill line. Obviously, you want to leave some space and so that when it expands as it freezes, it has room to expand. You want to clean the outside and the edge of the jar like before, screw your cap on. If you're not going to put it in the freezer, you refrigerate for 3 weeks. Or if you store it in the freezer, you can freeze it for up to 1 year. The fun thing about freezer jams is they're really, really super easy and also very, very quick. So Jen, is it boiling? It's boiling. So Jen has started our 10 minutes of time, and I'm gonna run over here and show you what it looks like when it's at that full boil. Oh, and I'm afraid that it steamed up a little bit, but I hope you were able to see it before it steamed up. That's kind of funny. All right, so looks like we have another message. Oh, just talking to somebody else. So we have 10 minutes. What else do we want to talk about? Any more questions or comments, please send them our way.
I've got a question real quick.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, I have a question real quick. This goes back to the beginning when you were talking about acids. Is there a reason that you don't generally use like fresh squeezed lemon juice as opposed to using the store-bought?
Yes, because the acidity of lemons vary.
Okay.
So if you get the bottled lemon juice, you're guaranteed a certain level of acidity. Whereas if you
Okay.
use just fresh lemons, you may not get enough acid in order to make it work.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Julie, do you have any nuggets of wisdom that you would like to share with the group?
I think I know that people get concerned about the sugar in jams, but that's what we expect to be in jams. And so when you think about the big picture, all the foods you eat during the day or the week, I don't have jam once a week. I used to, when I make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for my kids, I'd make one for me and take it to work. But really, you expect it to be sweet, and so you just make it be part of a moderate meal plan and have it be something that's more of an occasional item. And there's just lots of options now with both stevia and Splenda to sweeten or low sugar. So I think we can definitely meet the needs. You just, like Laura said, you're going to change the volume. When you cut down on that 8 cups of sugar per batch, you're going to make less jars of jelly or jam.
Yeah, thank you. So what does everybody plan to can? Jams or jellies or other preserves? We'll even take anything or any other canning questions you may have at this point. Throw them our way. Those sound good. Killer tomato. Ooh, there you go. Thank you, Julie, for sharing the low sugar freezer jam recipe.
Do you want me to read that to you, Laura? If you run out of jars, can you put in something else and either refrigerate or freeze?
Yes, you do not need to can in the jars. Any freezer container will work. So any of those plastic containers, I probably wouldn't put it in like a plastic bag just because of the shape wouldn't hold very good. But any other freezer container with a lid will work just fine. Yeah, thanks, Ashley. I'm excited for you to get started on your way of canning. Jams are not necessarily the easiest first thing to get started with, although they don't take very long to process. So that's what's good about that. Ooh, pear jelly and blackberry jam. That sounds yummy. I am just ready for all of the fruits to come on. So Jen, how much time do we have?
3 minutes and 20 seconds.
All right, 3 minutes, and then we'll show you how to take them out, how to test the lids, and then we'll ask for any more questions that you may have and let you go. So. All right, Julie, what's your favorite jam?
You know, I grew up with an apricot tree in my backyard, so I'm still, I'm that person that goes and tries to find that apricot tree in the neighborhood, and that is still my very, very favorite.
That is yummy. Every once in a while, the apricot tree in my father-in-law's yard will have apricots, and it is really just yummy. Even my kids like them, and they're pretty picky. So, oh, Killer Tomato says they had an apricot tree too, but she hated the apricot jam. Don't tell her mother. Well, to each their own. We all have different tastes and flavors that we enjoy. So, isn't that what's wonderful about the world? We're not all alike. All right, we got to be getting close. So, Jen, can we switch over to you? Okay. Turned it up, and you're looking at me from mine. So I'm not sure how to get. There we go. All right, got a minute left. Let's take a look at it.
Still not buttons turned on me.
No,
I turn that away.
no, it's that one. You gotta switch it around.
Right?
Turn it around. Turn it so this no.
Here's a question. If you try a recipe with an herb, say rosemary and apple, does the herb affect anything besides flavor? More or less acid or pectin? And the answer is no, it doesn't affect the acid. The herb
Thank you,
does not.
Julie.
Okay, you're welcome.
So we have just a few more seconds. Jen, it's still facing you. You want to switch it?
It's still on Julie, so I can't even tell. But I can.
No, you won't. They trip over the camera. All right, we're good. So first thing up is you want to open it so that the steam goes away from you. So I'm gonna open it away from me so I don't get a steam burn. It's still boiling, so that's great. I'm gonna turn it off, and I'm gonna set the timer for 5 minutes. This is not necessary, but it does help with the temperature drop. It's very hot in there. Giving it a minute or two to cool will be less likely to have jar breakage as you pull it out into the cooler air. So while we're waiting for the 5 minutes to go up, I'm going to get out the towel. So we have something to set it on. And I'm going to show you some that I canned the other day. So here's my can. And after 12 to 24 hours, you're going to just press down in the middle and see if it pops back up or not. This does not seem to be popping back up, so it is sealed. So we are going to just pull off the rings, and I've already wiped them down. If you want, you can label them so you know when you canned it. They recommend that you use your canned goods, home canned goods within a year for the best quality. If you canned it safely, then there shouldn't be a safety issue, but the quality tends to decline after that year. So putting your date on it is recommended, just so you know. And if you don't think you'll be able to recognize what it is by looking at it, going ahead and finding out what it is on it. Definitely do that. Then it's ready to store. You want to store it in a cool, dark, dry place for the best quality. The hotter exposure to sunlight or any moisture obviously will decrease the quality of your product. So we have about 3 more minutes. I'm going to turn the time back to you guys to let me know if you have any other questions. Yes, but,
You.
oh, I gotta go turn off this other water. Really quick. Okay, sorry. I had some extra water boiling just in case we didn't have enough. But we did, so we didn't need that. All right, 2.5 minutes. Any final questions or comments before I show you how to take them out? Nope.
Where are people getting canning supplies?
Good question. At least in my local store, which is fairly rural, there are jars with the canning lids on them. Obviously, if you have enough jars, you're not wanting to buy additional jars, and you're just looking for the flats. I have not been able to get any at my local area. Julie has a couple of websites. Fillmore Canning. Julie, you're gonna have to tell me that one.
I just put it in the chat box. It's fillmorecontainer.com.
Great. There. I also found another one. It's called Mason Official something. You know, your Mason jars. They also have some lids available that you can order. You probably will just have to Google it. I will send out the link when I send you the slides. Okay, so we have about 1 minute left. The Mason jar, the Mason lids were not that expensive. I have tried to get some off of Amazon, and they're fairly expensive. And then the really funny thing is, I'm going to show you. So last year, when there was no lids anywhere, I ordered these off of the internet. Says Ball. And I just barely opened them because I guess I didn't do any canning. They are not wide rim like they said. And I'm pretty sure they're not Ball because they don't have all of the Ball markings on them either. So be careful because there are a lot of false claims and fake stuff out there. Unfortunately, they do seem to be silly, so keep my fingers crossed that they'll continue to work. Okay, our time's up. I'm going to pull them out. Again, straight up, straight over, straight down. You might be tempted to try and wipe off any liquid that is still on top of the jar. Do not. It will dry without you wiping it off, and then you can clean it off after it's had a chance to seal. You don't want to do anything that might interfere with its sealing. Oh, I could have pulled out the whole rack. That probably would have been easier, but oh well. Okay, so when you are letting it cool, you want to make sure that there's space in between so they have a greater chance of cooling quicker. And you're good to go. Wait at least 12 hours before checking. And then we already showed you the process to do afterwards. So thank you for coming. Are there any final questions, comments before we leave?
No questions.
Well, thank you so much for coming. And Julie hopefully got your contact information so that we can send you a link to today's Zoom and also the PowerPoint slides. You guys have a great day. You're welcome to email Julie or I, or call us with any other questions you may have about Canyon. Thanks for joining us.